Hi, everybody. We're going to get started now. I just wanted to welcome you all to today's webinar. My name's Kaya McHugh. I'm the Assistant Director of Alumni Engagement at RIT, and this is our first Gold webinar. We're starting this new series for graduates of the last decade and trying to plan them around some topics that, this demographic would be interested in. Whether you're just starting your professional journey or navigating the early stages of your career, we hope this webinar offers valuable insights to help you discover a career that you might be passionate about or successfully transition into a new path. Now that you've all graduated, we hope that you all stay connected through to RIT through our RIT Alumni Association social media channels, including Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and X, where you can find all the up-to-date communications and opportunities about what's happening at RIT. To find our social channels, please view the chat box and you can find them all there. It's my pleasure to introduce Erica Hickey. She is she graduated in 2017 from the College of Art and Design with a degree in advertising and public relations. Erica started her career in the advertising industry, working at multiple agencies as a project manager and account manager. She covered sectors such as food and beverage, pharmaceuticals, beauty, and eye care. After 5 years in the industry, she decided to take the leap and pursue a career in higher education. Erica landed in her current role as the Events and Promotions Manager in the College of Art and Design at RIT. In her current role, she works to recruit prospective students in the college, improve current student experiences, and provide valuable resources to students. Erica is also in the process of completing her master's degree in higher education administration, and she expects to complete her degree this May. Today, Erica is going to use her experience in career pivoting to help us identify our transferable skills, gain the confidence to step outside of our comfort zones, and understand how to pursue a role that excites you. Whether you're looking for a new role or looking for your first job, Erica will give us tips and tricks to securing your dream role. Before I give Erica the floor, I just wanted to mention our interpreters. They will be pinned during this entire presentation. Now, Erica, go ahead, and we can't wait to see you present.
All right. Thanks, Kaya. Good evening, everyone. I can't see you, but you can see me. I hope we're all doing well wherever we're logging on from. My name is Erica Hickey. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm currently the Events and Promotions Manager for RIT's College of Art and Design, or depending on when you graduated, it was CIAS back in the day. So in my current role, I am the strategist and the planner for all events that are recruitment focused, including open houses, national portfolio day events, but then also some fun things that are very classic RIT, like Imagine RIT and Brick City Homecoming. So I want to thank you all for joining tonight. And I really want to give a shout out to the RIT Alumni Association for giving me the platform to talk to you all tonight, but also allowing me this chance to be able to talk about a topic I'm very passionate about how pivoting careers can be kind of scary, but also it's very exciting at the same time, and how maybe we can best be prepared for a career shift that maybe we didn't even expect to make at any point. Oh, switching over to my second monitor, my apologies. Let's see. There we go. So who am I and why do I get to talk to you all? So I'm a College of Liberal Arts alumni. I graduated in 2017 with a degree in advertising and public relations. That was the age of President Bill Dessler. Mark at Salsaritas was a celebrity to all of us. It was before the Shed and Magic Spell Studios were even built. I'm actually currently in my office right now in Gannett Hall, and right behind me is the window looking out to where Wallace Library is in the College of Liberal Arts. Back in the day, there was a hill that you could go down next to the library, and now that's the Shed building. So campus is a lot different than when I was here last in 2017. So like Kaya kind of teed up, after about 5 years in the advertising industry, I was really feeling that I was approaching a burnout stage, and I wasn't feeling super fulfilled in my work. Some of the companies I worked at were very great, and I really enjoyed my time there, but I wasn't quite feeling like I was in the right place in my career. So a little over 3 years ago, I found myself in a place where I knew I wanted to leave advertising, but I didn't necessarily have a specific new role in mind. I just wanted something different. So I actually kind of took a little bit of an extreme route, which reflecting on it now was a huge risk. But I quit my job with nothing lined up. And I took a couple month hiatus where I wanted to focus my time on taking intention to think about what I was meant to do in a career and where I wanted to head in the future. So as I was reflecting, and I didn't necessarily know where I wanted to go, I just knew I didn't want to be where I was. One thing that really stuck with me was that I knew that I dearly loved RIT. I missed RIT, and I knew that I had never really felt as fulfilled and connected with my work as when I was on campus. So I decided to start applying for jobs within RIT that really explored different areas of interest that I did discover while I was taking that time of self-discovery. I began applying, and that's how I got to the role I'm in now, which has been just about 3 years. So looking back on it now, fully the right choice. Very scary at first, but I'm very comfortable in my decision. I'm very confident in where I've ended up, and I've really now spent the past couple of years fully committing to my career shift into higher education, which, given today's climate and the way the higher ed landscape is, was kind of a daunting shift to make. But fast forward to now, like Kaya mentioned earlier, I'm in the final semester now of my master's program through Stony Brook University, where I've been studying higher education administration. It really illustrates how committed I am to this career shift and how I really felt it was the right fit for me. I always used to joke and say that I wouldn't go back to grad school unless it was 100% something that I was fully sure of. And then about 2 years ago, once I was about a year into my career, is really when I realized it was the time to do so. Throughout my grad program, I have taken specific interest and focus on student enrollment strategies and trends. I've been focusing on student retention when it comes to the university landscape, but also looking at career readiness for students once they graduate, and what that looks like as a student, but also as a university. So all of these different facets of my experience and my professional work are hopefully teeing me up to be a pretty decent choice of a person to be chatting with y'all tonight. Oh, I always laugh at people that can't advance the slides in a webinar, and here I am being that person now. So that's how I got to where I am now. And today I hope to use some of those experiences combined with my research and my work in higher ed to kind of pose some questions and prompts to you to maybe get you thinking a little bit more about if now is the time for maybe you to make a career pivot, or maybe find some confidence, or even just explore if it's something you're even willing to broach the subject of if you do want to do a career shift. I know we have just an hour. I want to make sure we have time for Q&A too. So I want to keep this overview very high level, and just cover a couple of these things off below, including discovering your personal philosophy of work. That's something I'm very passionate about. Identifying when you know it's time for a career change, how you can identify what change exactly you want to make and how drastic of a career shift you want to make. Looking at your steps you might need to take to be prepared for that next big step into a new career. We'll talk a little bit about learning how to leverage your existing degree and experience. You don't always have to start over net new. And I want to make sure that's clear too. You know, I'm not necessarily saying, let's go back to square one like you're fresh out of high school and go get a whole new degree. Let's take the experience you got at RIT and how can we work with that? And then take your current job experience you have and how can we work with that as well? And then how can you find support in this process? Support comes in many different forms, and I want to just chat about some different resources that I recommend to really have a good support system if you're going to take on a career shift. Now, like I mentioned, because this is a Zoom webinar, I can't see you all, but I do want to encourage you to use the Q&A feature. I might not answer as we go along, but feel free to toss any questions my way. At the end, we'll definitely have time to review those. I can't promise I will answer them all perfectly in a way you want to hear, but I'll definitely do my best to use some of my experience, the research I've done, and I'll just try to offer some guidance or recommendations or hopefully point you in the right direction. Oh my gosh, this window. So let's just level set. Before we dive in, I want to make sure it's clear that I am very aware that everyone has their own philosophy of work, how they view themselves as a career person, and how they fit into that career. My view of work might not align with yours, and that is totally okay. We don't have to have the same view of how we interact within our careers. I just want to make sure that we're all thinking through our own lenses. And I hope that some of the things I'm talking through, you can still find benefit in them and still make you think about some different opportunities you could pursue. Two, I'll never claim to be a career expert or guru. I'm not a certified career counselor. I've taken courses in it, I have studied it, but I'm not a full-time career counselor. I'm not here to give you like a playbook of the step-by-step what you need to do to find success. I want this to be a collaborative, creative exercise for you where you can, like I mentioned, use it as an exercise to reflect and then make a plan moving ahead. And finally, I just got to acknowledge that I know that today's job market is tumultuous and frankly, it sucks for a lot of people. I know that for some, there's the stresses of financial concerns and family concerns you might have, and different roles you play in your life and how you need to take care of them, and how that may dictate what your career path looks like. I know that layoffs are very common. I feel like every time you click into LinkedIn, you're seeing people that are experiencing layoffs. So I want to acknowledge all that. And I know that it's not going to be a cut and dry approach for everyone. And maybe this isn't a stage of life where you're able to just pursue a huge career shift, but maybe these are giving you tools for when you feel comfortable making that shift, you feel a little bit more prepared. So let's talk about work philosophy. So I first want to share my personal work philosophy and how I view how my career fits into my life. So I really started reflecting on this during COVID. Speaking of those layoffs, I was laid off about 3 weeks into the COVID-19 pandemic in March of 2020. And so I felt that pain pretty soon into the pandemic. I had only been at my role at the time for about 10 months. And I really found myself doubting myself and my future within work because it felt like I had just lost my dream role. And I thought I had everything teed up. Looking back on it now, I think it was a really big learning lesson. And I was extremely fortunate to have been able to land on my feet relatively quickly into a new role within that same advertising industry. But I understand the pain and stress of that. About a year after I had that role is when I decided to walk away from that role. And that's because I was really thinking actively about what I valued in work. And the pandemic really made me reevaluate my relationship with work and what I wanted out of my career. So this is where I use that time to really focus on what my philosophy of work looked like and what I needed to do to pivot in my career so that I could be fully content. So my work philosophy that I still go by 3 years later is built up on three key foundational pillars. First and foremost for me, my career, I don't just see it as a means of collecting a paycheck. I need to feel fulfilled. And I know that that is not how everyone views work, and that's totally okay. Some people, it is a 9 to 5, you clock in, clock out, and done. And I totally respect that approach. This is just how I view my way of work. I need to feel that I am making a positive difference in someone else's work or their lives. I know I don't work in healthcare. I'm not literally saving a life, but for me, I feel very fulfilled when I know I might be making somebody's workflow a little bit better, or I'm able to make them smile or laugh at work, or I have friendships with my coworkers. Those are all things that I feel like I'm making positive differences in somebody else's life, even if it's just their work life. That's fulfillment for me. And finally, like I kind of teed up, if it doesn't feel right, I will leave to find my next role. That's something that I keep in mind no matter where I go, even though I feel like I found a really good career fit now. I'll always keep that in the back of my mind that if I feel like I'm not growing or I feel like I'm not fully settled and content, I need to evaluate if it's time for the next step. Right now, I'm very comfortable, but I think this exercise that I just talked through in my perspective is a good exercise for everyone else to do as well. Take some time, think about how you envision yourself, your relationship with work. Are you somebody who just wants that paycheck and you don't need as more of the emotional fulfillment side of things? Or are you somebody that maybe is willing to sacrifice a higher paying salary if it means that you are really passionate and love what you do? Once you kind of know how you view yourself and your role within your work, you have a better frame of reference for then when you look ahead to potentially making a career shift. So how do you know if it's time to pivot? This isn't an exhaustive list. This is just like a culmination of some things that I have heard before, or some of them were cues for myself to know it was time for me to pivot as well. I also want to stress that they're not always negative. You don't always have to be miserable in your job to need a career shift. I think that's a misconception that sometimes we have is that, you just move on when things get really bad. And no, it can be a very positive experience as well, is what triggers you to want to move to the next career option. Um, it's very possible that in your life you have circumstances where you're very comfortable in your job and you really like the place you're at, but maybe the work itself isn't quite the right fit. Um, that's where I found myself. I was at a top ranked employer. The culture was great. My team was great, but I found myself dreading the actual work I was doing. I wasn't feeling connected with my clients, and I wasn't really connected with the products we were putting out. And frankly, I was feeling a little bored. I feel like many people in their personal lives may have instances where something happens and it really hits home that life is short, do what you love. And for me, I felt like I had a couple of those experiences where I realized that I personally was not willing to sacrifice 8 to 9 hours a day just going through the motions if it wasn't a career that I was really passionate about. So some of these things I just want to call out here of when to know, maybe it's time to pivot. If you're feeling unfulfilled in your current job, but on the flip side, maybe you just have something that you're really interested in that you've never done, and you feel like you need a shift and you want to pursue something that has always been in the back of your mind, but you haven't really taken that step for yet. Um, on a more negative side, maybe the job is negatively impacting your personal life, maybe with your personal relationships, your family, your partners, your friends. Maybe you're feeling your health even taking an impact from the work you're doing in a negative way. That could be a sign that it's time for a change as well. Maybe you're comfortable like I was, but you want to push yourself and you want to go explore something new and you need something a little bit more dynamic and exciting. That can be a sign that you might want to pivot as well. And I feel like this is kind of that lowest of lows when you wake up in the morning and you know that feeling when you really don't want to get out of bed and then you just know you have to go to work. And that's not a good feeling to have, So you shouldn't wake up and just dread what your next 8 to 9 hours should be. Again, that's coming from a place of privilege to be able to wake up and love what you do every day, and I do acknowledge that. But if you do have the opportunity to change, I think it's a really good chance to take that leap or the pivot, as that's the phrase for tonight, to go into a career where maybe you wake up a little bit excited about what you have to do that day. So maybe you're feeling like, all right, I checked some of those boxes on that last slide. I'm ready for something to change, but where the hell do I start? So that's a common sentiment. And I know it can be a very daunting process. I'm a task-oriented individual. So for me, when I was reaching the point where I knew I wanted to make a change, I couldn't just do that huge, big jump into change my career. I really needed to break my career pivot down into more manageable tasks and activities that I could follow that worked in that right direction to commit to a career shift without just fully making the leap. It was a pivot with actionable items I could do throughout that process. I also didn't want to make a career shift and just find something that I thought might be a right fit and dive into it. Because transparently, I did do that at one point. Right after I had left my first job, I had an offer on the table that was something totally different. And I saw the offer letter and it was a pay increase and I was excited and I took that first job. 6 weeks later, I resigned. It wasn't a fit for me. And I think for me, why I did that is I didn't take the time to really reflect on if it was the best fit for me and what I really wanted to get out of the position. And looking back on it now, I realized I didn't put that work in on myself to make sure I was really comfortable with what I was going to be getting out of that new career pathway. So one of the first steps I kind of recommend is reflecting on your current role, past roles, places you've had experiences. Take a step back and physically write them out. I'm a big proponent of handwriting things. If you're a notes app in your phone, that's fine, but I'm always going to promote handwritten if possible. Bullet point out what you enjoyed about your role and keep it super high level. It doesn't have to be, very detailed, specific, tangible items. You don't need to say, oh, my coworker Sam, I really liked that I could go into the kitchen and talk about dragon books with Sam, which great work perk for me at least. But maybe we just say, I like a work environment where there's a friendly culture and I can make friendships with my coworkers. Maybe that's something that we can keep a little bit more open-ended instead of trying to find your Sam everywhere you go. So this is what my list looked like when I walked away from advertising. I was debating my next move, so I made these two like kind of T-chart list. Um, I don't like the standard pro and con list approach because I find them a little bit hard to turn into actionable items. I like to focus more so on a reflection that you can use as an action item to carry you through to that next stage. Um, so I'm going to use myself kind of as a case study throughout the night. Obviously, I'm not going to pertain to everybody's experiences in life, but I think it's an easier way to illustrate how this process looks in practice. So from my previous roles that I had when I was in that ad agency world, I really liked the strategic planning and collaboration aspects of my job. I liked the creative work that and intent and thought that went into carrying out our processes. I liked collaborating with others. I liked training others and educating them. I liked being a source of education, a source of information and education for my clients. I liked that work from home flexibility, which a lot of people I know still like that. I liked talking with new people, which I got to do when I was talking with new clients or new agency partners from different parts of the country. And I liked that the ad world was a little bit more of a casual culture and I could authentically show up every day as myself. I didn't want a buttoned up corporate experience. That's not who I am as a person. That's not what I was looking for. So I really liked that I was able to be very authentically casual in my day-to-day work. So when I'm then shifting to look at what I wanted out of the next role, I was thinking of things that were sometimes things I did like that I wanted to carry through, or maybe it was highlighting some of those more negative things that I was hoping I would be able to find fulfillment in my next role. So I wanted work subject matter that was a little bit more interesting. My last client was in pharma, and I wasn't really feeling very interested in that. I wanted to be able to talk face to face with people. Yeah, I got to meet new people on Zoom. I'm an extrovert. I like to talk in person. I wanted to be able to be face to face with folks in whatever capacity my new role had me do that. And I really loved working with creative teams in my past. And I wasn't doing that so much towards the end of my career in advertising. And that was something I knew I wanted to do no matter what in my future career pathways is I wanted to have a creative team that I wanted to work with. And while I didn't explicitly have a specific job title in mind or, a company I specifically wanted to get to until I realized it was RIT, I did have a vision for how I would fit into a role and how that role would make me feel. And that was really what I was hoping to get out of this exercise. And I hope that's something that you're able to do should you decide to make this kind of T-chart approach. So this one is probably one of the biggest obstacles that I hear talk about. I already have the degree. I'm not going to waste it. Or my worst case scenario is I'm not even using whatever that degree topic is. I find this especially in a lot of STEM grads, the engineering, the sciences folks that feel that they have a little bit more of a niche degree. They want to be able to use that degree. But the truth is, over the past like 10 to 15 years, college curriculums at universities across the world are really tailoring their curriculums to, yes, be academic in nature on a specific topic, but they also are designed to provide students with transferable skills that then can be taken outside of their original degree program. So when I say transferable, I mean you can apply it to many different areas. It's still relevant in different industries, different companies, different roles. So this next data point I want to talk about fluctuates a bit depending on how the question's asked, but somewhere near half of all college grads in the past decade do not work in an industry that is directly tied to their program of study. So that would be like, somebody gets a degree in engineering, but then they're working in advertising. There's somebody that is employed in a job, but it's in a whole different field. At first, that might sound concerning to some people, and maybe you consider that like a failure or a negative college graduation outcome. But if you take into consideration that your college curriculum and college degree programs are focused on just supplying students with these skills that are more general, that can be transferred, it's not as daunting of a statistic. We also don't know if those people in a new industry, did they switch industries because they felt fulfilled and they were excited to start a new career and they felt prepared for that? I know some people are sometimes like, oh, well, maybe they just couldn't find a job and that's why they changed industries. But we don't know the intent behind a career shift. So if you ever see data like that, that's a little daunting or concerning that, people aren't working in that industry, they're somewhere. They found somewhere that they're fully employed in. So it's not always a negative, thing to be. When we talk about transferable skills that I talked about, I'm talking about both hard skills, like the tangible skills, softwares you're familiar in, but also the soft skills, the harder to teach skills, things like communication and problem solving. Those are more the soft skills. They are transferable skills, like I mentioned, can be applied to a new role, new industry. Now, maybe you have a new career pathway in mind, but you're thinking, "Ugh, but I've never actually done XYZ, or I don't have experience in XYZ." That's not the end of the road. It's not a deal breaker. A huge part of that discovery of a new career path requires that you reflect on what experience and skills that you already have. The key is framing them and leveraging them into the new role. So this is where we need to use some self-reflection. This is a table I put together using myself again as a case study. Like I mentioned, I was in the corporate agency world. So I was in pharma, food and beverage, beauty space. And then I decided I want to go to higher ed. And I was like, man, I don't have a degree in academic advising. I wasn't even a tour guide in college. So I don't know why a university would want to hire me to work for them if I haven't worked there before. Well, that's when my reflection exercise came into play. So looking at previous skills I did have, I was managing timelines as a project manager and an account manager for multiple campaigns at a time I was working on. Okay, so how do I position that to a new potential employer, in this case, RIT, that I wanted to go to? Well, that demonstrates my ability to manage multiple workflows, and I was also delivering on-time results. It's all about positioning. I had familiarity with principles of branding. I understood brand identity, which I might not necessarily need to do in my now role, but that shows that I had the ability to research new topics. I could become an expert and I could become really immersed in that brand, which shows that I don't necessarily need prior direct experience. I wasn't a pharmaceutical supplier before I was a expert account manager in that. That's skills that I learned on the job, and that's a transferable skill I can take into a new industry as well. In my previous roles, I had strong partnerships with clients, and there was some difficult verticals that had a lot of compliance issues, like pharmaceuticals. I'm not selling pharmaceuticals now or eye care products at RIT, but it shows that I can handle conflict. I can handle heavily regulated things. Within higher ed, there's a lot of legal tape you have to go through, and there's laws that you have to follow and federal regulations. I can apply that there. I can also use my strong communication skills in my current role when I recruit. And then just the final one, I had experience in strategic marketing campaigns. And while I wasn't going to come into my next role and be rolling out huge marketing campaigns at the highest level, it shows that I was a problem solver. It shows that I could apply concepts and I could try to achieve different objectives for the brand. So make your own T-chart like this. Clearly I'm a fan of these T-charts, but take the exercise to actually write these out and reframe your existing skills. Again, you can do it by hand, but look at your resume as you have it now, look at your skills, and think about where you may want to be heading and try to write those out and see if you can frame them to fit that new industry.
Erica, we have a
Yes.
question in the chat that seems like it pertains to that last slide. So, this person says that their background is in chemistry and they've shifted outside the lab towards writing technical specifications and purchasing. Turns out they prefer to talk to people daily rather than individual work in the lab, but they've been struggling where to go career-wise.
Yeah. That's I feel like that was one of those classic examples that I talked at the beginning about how, some of those more STEM focused ones, and you make that shift and you realize maybe it's not exactly what you used to do or what you have experience in. But again, I think this exercise is really applicable to that type of situation. Draw out what your skills are. Maybe you started something new and you realized it wasn't quite the fit you thought it would be, or maybe your experience isn't quite teeing up to what it was. But it's all about the mindset frame and the shift of your view of yourself and how you're going to be carrying out that work, if that makes sense. That was kind of a long-winded answer to that, but I see opportunity for this to be a more sit down reflective exercise. Focus on the role you're in, what you hope to get to, and kind of map out where you see yourself headed, if that makes sense. We can revisit that later. It's hard for me to not read the questions too. So if that didn't answer it, drop it back in the chat and we can chat later on too. Um, will an employer brush over me if I don't come from that industry? I know sometimes people will say, well, I didn't have, um, experience there, so they must have just tossed my resume to the side and they ignored me. I won't even have a shot when it comes to a new industry. And that's not necessarily the case. It's really more so focused on how you present yourself, how you present your goals. You're clearly outlining the transferable skills that you can leverage from your previous experience. And that's what the difference makers are. Um, Employers are really prioritizing employees who are using the critical thinking, the problem solving, they can communicate, they are demonstrating interest and initiative, they're committed to this new pathway. If it seems like a passive, oh, I just thought it would be cool to work in XYZ because I've never done it, is an employer going to want to invest in you? Maybe not. You might be a little bit more risky there, but maybe you're somebody that you're showing that you're taking initiative to learn, you want to grow, and you're already taking the steps to get more education in those areas. That might demonstrate a candidate that they want to really pursue. Show employers the work you've been doing outside of your 9 to 5 to be prepared for this shift. Show them what you're doing to really commit to a new area. It doesn't necessarily have to be something you've physically done in a job. Maybe it's those extracurricular things that you're sharing in your interviews. That's totally fine to share as well. If you're taking those steps to get the hard skills like you did to get your college degree, why wouldn't we try to refine those soft skills that you also have at the same time? So what are employers seeing? So we're looking at data and, analysis from employers across many different industries to see what they're seeing in the hiring landscape. And I know from our perspective, a lot of us who are maybe on the job hunt, we're seeing difficult hiring, extremely competitive pools. But I think it's also important to look from the employer's point of view to kind of have that frame of reference as you're looking at your next steps. The difference maker when it comes to making hiring decisions, ultimately, when you have a huge pool of candidates, really comes down to those soft skills. They're seeing candidates that can be incredibly bright, have strong high GPAs, great experience, they've been at top name companies, but maybe they're lacking the soft skills that kind of set them apart. Again, those critical thinking demonstrations, the problem solving, having tangible examples to talk about and be able to verbalize a time when you problem solved and a time when you had to use critical thinking. You can clearly communicate those. That's where employers are seeing a little bit of a lapse when it comes to their candidates in today's job market. Some people say, if I'm going to change my career pathway, do I have to go back to undergrad and get a whole nother degree? And that's not the case because a lot of times these employers are starting to prioritize things like certifications or shorter ways to get to experience that might not be in a traditional job situation. It's an actual learned experience that you did. Certifications and professional development things, they show initiative, they show that you're exploring, and it shows that you are a go-getter who's trying to better yourself. And that's what employers are really highlighting. There's some industries that are very saturated markets. I think of like how many engineering applications might one entry-level engineering role get, and it can be hundreds of apps going in, cover letters, resumes. When you're looking at that stack of 100, what makes them stand out? And that's where point 3 in here comes in, and that's showing that basic courtesies sometimes go a long way. Send a follow-up email. This sounds like basic stuff, like, when your parents say, oh, did you deliver them a printed version of your resume? And people are like, no, you just submit it through LinkedIn now. But sometimes those things do make the difference, especially in industries where maybe they are a little bit less modernized. Follow interview etiquette, show up on time, take initiative, say hello first, don't seem timid. Those are things that you can practice in your day-to-day life. I know it's not always second nature to everyone, but it can be a good opportunity to try to push yourself and develop those softer skills as well. This is also something I hear people say, I've submitted 200 applications to a bunch of different jobs. I can't land anything. And something that employers indicate is when they see cover letters and resumes that are a little bit more tailored to the specific role they're hoping to get, that's kind of what makes them stand out in that stack of, the 100 apps that are coming in for one role. I'm a big fan of having customized cover letters. I know that is a daunting, long process, and it may not pertain to your industry, but that could be a step that you take to maybe set yourself, apart from other candidates, is show your dedication and initiative to focus on that one particular brand that you want to work for or company. I'm coming from that advertising background there. So we're kind of flying through this all, and I want to allow questions to come back up. But now that we've talked about how to prepare for that shift and how to start exploring if you want to make a career shift, I want to focus on some more actionable recommendations that I have for people that are maybe feeling like they might be ready to try something new. So first, I'm a firm believer that we are all constantly learning, even if we don't realize it, and we stand to learn so much from our peers. So share your resume and your cover letters with them. Get a second set of eyes on them. Tell them about the types of jobs you're looking at, why you want to have that career shift. Ask them for feedback. Find somebody in the field you want to go into, or maybe at the company if you have one in mind that you're targeting. Share your materials with them. I think it used to seem so taboo and private to keep your job applications and your cover letter and things that was your personal information. But now let's learn from each other, because odds are somebody that you're sharing with at one point or another has been in a similar boat as you. So be transparent with them. Ask for a second set of eyes. Invite feedback. You don't always have to take it, but sometimes it's just nice to hear things from somebody else with a different perspective than your own. Go get coffee with someone who you haven't in a while. It can be a former coworker, a former classmate from RIT. It can be a friend that you lost contact with, even. It doesn't even have to be professional in nature. Practice those social skills. Embrace those first couple awkward moments when you walk up to somebody you haven't seen in a while and you're trying to kind of vibe check each other and see how you mesh. Embrace that awkward, because that's a soft skill you're developing there. Your level of comfort in being in new, unfamiliar situations that can benefit you in the job hunt process, the interview process, especially when you're heading into a field where maybe you're not fully comfortable or very experienced in. And you never know when somebody might tip you off to an opportunity, or you tip them off or teach them something. You never know, even if it's just a friend, sometimes they can be a good source for you as well. So that leads into simplifying networking. And we've been hearing since we first all got into RIT about how it is so important to network, but it just sounds so formal and transactional. Networking doesn't need to be like boardrooms and briefcases and suits and very formalized process. It can be as simple as just asking a quick question to a coworker on a team you never work with. It doesn't have to necessarily be related to your specific role, but maybe you're asking them about what they're doing. That's networking. That's a connection you're making. Maybe you have somebody you see on LinkedIn that works in the field that you want to be in, and you shoot them a note and ask them, hey, can we chat? I'd love to hear about how you got to where you are. What's it like in the landscape today? Learn from others who are in the place you want to see yourself in at some point. Look at those LinkedIn thought pieces, drop a comment. We can laugh at LinkedIn and how there's the influencer wannabes on there, but it really is a great resource to find others that are in that professional mindset and meet them where they're at. Drop a comment of support, interact with them, or maybe just go to someone's webinar like mine that you're already at. But that could be a good opportunity to just network, draw connections. It doesn't all just have to be business card exchanges. Networking can be very simplified, so don't let it intimidate you when people recommend to improve your networking. Again, I've said this multiple times. I'm a big fan of handwriting out your goals. Write out your goals, and that includes goals that you have for yourself, manifestations. I believe you say it out loud and you will it to happen, and you write out plans to make it be. But also sometimes just give yourself some motivational encouragement. Sometimes we are our own biggest cheerleaders, and sometimes we are our only cheerleaders. And taking the time to cheer yourself on is a really great investment into your own confidence and your own well-being. We're not just vessels for work. I'm also a big proponent of that. As a human, I am a firm believer that we are more than the output of our work. And so humanize yourself and give yourself some grace and celebrate yourself as well, I think is very key to staying level, especially in really trying times when it comes to making a career shift. Tap into RIT Alumni Association resources, which step one, you're doing it. You're attending one of the webinars, but they offer a ton of different webinars. If you go on the site in the Alumni Association, you can see different topics. If anyone knows Victor Santiago, I know Victor led another one at one point about buying your first home. So they're not always like career focused, but it's just a good resource. Connect with people, see who's leading webinars. If you have some downtime on a Wednesday night and you want to jump on one, try it again. You can also join Tigers Connect. You can connect with other alumni. You can send messages. You can be a mentor. You can mentor others. You can be mentored if you need to make a connection there. As alumni, we also can still attend the career fair. So definitely find ways to connect with the career fair. If you're in a creative position or a College of Art and Design grad, there's creative industry days you can still participate in. So we have a lot of resources, and I think a lot of times we as alumni may not tap into them enough, but we have to put some of that responsibility on ours. We walked out those doors, and so now it's kind of on us to find those resources and really tap into them later on. But also, if you have like a faculty member or a professor that you really connected with that you haven't talked to, reach out to them. I work with faculty really frequently at RIT, and what I find is they really just love to help their students and alumni find success, no matter what form that success looks like for them. So don't feel like you're going to be like, oh, they're going to be disappointed. I'm not working in XYZ industry like they thought I would. They want to find you, they want you to find success as well. So faculty are a really great support system. That can also be a really good opportunity for you to practice your networking or get coffee with someone you haven't talked with in a while. Um, Practice some self-reflection. I think that we are the best versions of ourselves when we really slow down. We are self-aware, we reflect on who we are, and we're confident in who we are. A career shift can be a massive change for some, and staying true to your core self throughout that process is really vital for success. Um, and finally, the last thing to do in this process is just pivot. You don't know until you do it. And honestly, what I felt was the scariest part of that process was giving myself the permission and saying, yes, it's time to pivot, and then actually doing it. We can be our own biggest obstacles and we can get in our own ways. So the just doing it part and the just pivoting is when you can finally determine if it was the right choice for you. And let's say you realize I shouldn't have made that change, which I did. And 6 weeks later, like I said, I resigned. I'm still here. I'm still okay. I found my way. It's still a learning experience because you learn more about what you don't want. And it also is an experience to learn more about what you do want. So embrace those changes, make the pivot, and maybe even head back to where you were before and you realize it was the right choice. Or maybe it's time to pivot again and try something entirely new. So that wraps up everything I have for today. Obviously, I tried to keep it super high level so that if you had some thoughts churning on if you're ready to make a career change, you have some kind of actionable things you can take with you now. I know one of those action items that I talked about a little while ago was to network or connect with someone new. I invite you all to connect with me on LinkedIn. It's just my name, Erica Hickey. I know you can share like a QR code or a URL, but that was above me this week. My email is up on the screen as well. Feel free to shoot me an email, even if you just want to practice an introduction or a thank you, or if you ever want a second set of eyes, I'm more than happy to be a peer reviewer with somebody. Or maybe I'm just a new LinkedIn connection. You can see if maybe someday I post a picture of my cats on there. You never know. So Kaya, I know you've been overlooking the Q&A. I have not opened it because that's a lot for me to handle. So if there's any more questions or if anyone still has them, feel free to drop them in the Q&A and Kaya will toss them at me.
Yeah, so we have a couple. One from the registration page was, how do you know you're making the right decision when you do decide to make that shift into a new career, especially if it means moving to a new place or making a big life change?
Um, I don't think you do know until you're in it. Um, for me, I think that's part of the risk of making a career change. When I was very comfortable with my change, when I decided to walk away from it, for me, is I found peace knowing I wasn't going to be waking up doing something I didn't want to be doing. And I was excited by the risk of the new career path I was going down. So for me, that was kind of getting to my level of, yes, this is a comfortable thing I'm doing. But I didn't know until I was fully in it. And I would say I was very fortunate. And once I entered higher ed, it was a couple months in and I said, oh, this feels like home. This feels comfortable. This feels like the work I'm doing is making an impact. And I felt very assured of myself. But it wasn't until I was in it. And I think something that we as humans need to practice more is embracing the uncomfortable phase. It's not always going to be the I dive in and it was perfect right off the bat. There's going to be self-doubt along the way. But I think if we embrace the uncomfortable levels, that's when we can kind of decide for ourselves if it was the right choice. When I shifted to higher ed, I didn't move across the country or anything as drastic, but I left something that was very comfortable to me. And I was very familiar with the industry and folks from other companies in the area. I had a lot of good connections. And when I made the change, I didn't have as many connections. So for me, knowing it was the right choice is I was okay with being uncomfortable and I was confident in my ability to be uncomfortable for a bit until I figured out if it was 100% the right choice for me, if that helps.
Yeah, that's great. Another question was from a person who has a background in nursing and wants to change into higher education. They're currently studying history at the University of Cambridge in the UK, and they want to take a role at a university to get their feet wet. They're in Boston. Do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, sorry, I'm reading through this. Anna, you have a lot of experience. Also, Boston, great city. Love that for you. So recommendations on wanting to pursue higher education. What I didn't realize about higher ed is it's kind of like an entire industry on its own. It's not just education. So there's a lot of marketing roles. There's data roles. There's the tech side of it. There is the education aspect. There's the career services. There's academic advising and learning the landscape of higher ed and what types of careers out there and what types of jobs are hiring are a really good way to just decide where you feel like you might fit in. I have a lot of resources that helped me when I learned about higher education. Inside Higher Ed is a really great community sourced website. There's a lot of editorial posts in there, but there's also current events and updates in higher ed. That is how I learn about what a lot of other universities are doing. Fortunately, the Boston area has a lot of really strong universities and a lot of opportunities there to pursue. The Chronicle of Higher Education is another online resource I recommend just to see what's going on out in the landscape. But also, you've spent obviously a bunch of time in different colleges and experiences in yourself. So look at what you liked about your college experiences and write those down. Maybe try that exercise and see what you liked about being in school and maybe see if you can find a fit of a career that could align with those transferable skills. Don't hesitate to reach out. Like I said, I'm in a higher ed master's program right now. So if you need any resources there, I'm happy to share them with you too.
Another question we have is, do you have a recommendation of where to find those certificates that you mentioned that could show you are interested in a pivot? So I guess the certificates outside of your typical day-to-day job.
Yeah, so like ones that come to my mind is for like in the advertising space, there's like Google Ads certifications, there's professional development certifications. I would say start with look at what industry you're kind of targeting. If that's you want to do some sort of certification in the meantime, look at your industry and look at what types of professional certifications others are getting. So it can start with a simple Google search. Maybe look at job postings for a specific role and see what the preferred requirements are. Sometimes they list out people have done maybe like a coding boot camp or preferred skills, something you don't necessarily need to get in there, but what's going to make you set yourself apart as a stronger candidate. Maybe it's like they're looking for graphic design skills would be preferred, but it's not required. So those are the kind of areas where I see that there's a really good opportunity to supplement with certifications or online courses that you can participate in. Many are free, some are paid. I know RIT also offers a couple different opportunities. There's RIT certified when it comes to like professional certifications, but there's also smaller programs you can, or even just webinars you can participate in, and don't hesitate to share those in your experience, in your resumes as activities you've done, extracurriculars, things like that. You still list them in your resume or even just in your interviews. It doesn't have to be written down if you don't feel confident enough in it, but bring it up should you get to that interview stage.
I have a question that came up while you were talking.
Mhm.
How did you feel like you dealt with imposter syndrome when you first started or transitioned into a new role? Because I know that's a big thing for younger professionals and people going into new fields. So how did you deal with that?
Yeah, I think the best example of that is I was one of the youngest at the agency I first started at. And I actually started as a copywriter and very quickly realized I didn't want to be a writer anymore. And I had a mentor, my manager at the time, who said, "We think you'd be a really strong project manager." But I had no formal project management training. My background wasn't in it, other than me loving timelines, and I was a clear communicator, and I had the skills, the softer skills, but I didn't have the hard skills there. And it was sometimes hard going into those meetings where I'm sitting next to, industry professionals with 10, 15 years experience, and I'm trying to tell them what timeline to work on, or, the client said this and I need you to carry this out. And it felt like I was embarrassed by that. And I would say, oh, but whatever timeline you want. And that's not how the role should have gone. It needed to be me doing my role properly and really holding everyone to a timeline. And so for me, it was really asking for feedback. I took my peer feedback very seriously. At one point, I did have somebody that told me I was brash and abrasive, and that was a wake up call for me. And I realized my communication style needed to shift. Um, but it wasn't a bad thing if I got feedback. It wasn't a bad thing when I talked with my manager and they were setting goals for me. That didn't mean I was doing something wrong all the time. They wanted me to be better and they wanted me to grow too. So I think getting comfortable with feedback is a really big way to beat imposter syndrome. Um, and then showing up authentically as yourself, always showing a very authentic side of you, being transparent, showing some of your personality. Once I felt like I was really being myself, I felt a lot more confident in my work. And I feel like I was being taken more seriously. And I was more confident in, I do have a handle on what's going on. I have been learning a lot, and I do deserve to be here because I wouldn't have been given this role if I wasn't capable. So, yeah, the self-reflection and self-awareness was a big learning curve, but that's how I've really gotten beyond that imposter syndrome. I think everyone will always feel some of it. Sometimes even now I walk into a room and I'm up next to the dean and I'm just supposed to chat and strategize with him. And sometimes it's like, how did I get here? But he's just a human, and he's human too, and he wants the best for us, and he wants the best for me, and so it can't be that intimidating. He offered me a spot at his table, and I'm going to do my job there. So it's an ongoing process.
Yeah, that was great. And I don't see any other questions popping up, so we can start to wrap up. And I just want to say thank you, Erica, for that amazing insight. That was great. I could think I could speak for all of us here. That was super helpful, and you gave a lot of great resources about pivoting and finding your career and self-reflection. It's definitely something I need to work on as well. I think everybody always could benefit from self-reflection. Um, I do want to plug our next gold webinar, which will be Graduated and Grounded, which is wellness tools for recent grads. So kind of learning and developing those healthy habits after graduation. I did post a link to register for that in the chat box, and then a link to all of our alumni events on our website. I also posted that link. If you have any questions, feel free to email me or Erica. Um, and I just want to thank everybody for being here tonight. And I'm excited for someone said they can't see the link. Let's see. Oh, I see why. Okay, let me post it again. There you go. Okay, everybody should be able to see it now. Um, I hope everybody has a great night. And I will be sending out a survey to all of those who attended tonight just to get some feedback since these are a little bit newer to us. We want to kind of gauge the interest and your perspective on all of these. So expect that within the next couple days. And just thank you again, Erica, for being here with us.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you, Alumni Relations. And thank you, everyone, for joining tonight. And feel free to reach out if you have any further questions.
Thank you.
Have a good night.